This is Rachel Manella sitting with Master Jeff Perkins on Saturday, April 9th, 2022 at his dojo in Livonia, Michigan. We're going to discuss Master Perkins' accomplishments in Isshin-Ryu karate and his work as a martial arts instructor. Can you please state and spell your name for me?
Jeff Perkins, Jeffperkins.
Thank you. Where were you born?
I was born in Detroit, Michigan,
What year?
1956.
And what was your childhood like?
You know, I don't remember it being bad, but my mom was a single mom. My dad died when he was about 34, 35 years old. I was about 4 or 5. And I don't remember him much, just from pictures. I remember the day he died, I was there. And as a little kid, I just kind of watching mom freak out, so I just kind of freaked out with her. But I didn't understand what was going on. And she never remarried, and she raised 3 kids. I was the youngest of 3.
Brothers, sisters?
2 older sisters.
So when did you first get involved with martial arts or Isshin-Ryu?
It actually began somewhere about 1971, 72. My brother-in-law, Ed Babbitts, was a brown belt in Isshin-Ryu. And I was always an athlete in high school, forever. I mean, I've been in athletics since I was 6 years old. And it kind of developed. We had him do a self-defense class for a bunch of A-type personality football guys, and so they showed us how to do a couple blocks and a few punches and let us beat each other up. And so we had a 10-week self-defense class, and then we did it in the dojo that my brother-in-law was training in. It was in Inkster, Michigan, and it was one of the first Isshin-Ryu dojos. There were 2. There was one on 7 Mile that was run by Ken Pittaway, and this one was run by Doug Noxon. Sensei Noxon passed away before I started. So I started officially in Isshin-Ryu at the dojo in 1972 at the Inkster School. And Norbert Donnelly was the head instructor, and we had a bunch of other instructors because Sensei Donnelly also ran a Kigo Harbor dojo, and he was mainly out there. But it was 1972. And I only know that because another Isshin-Ryu guy by the name of Carl Prather, it amazes me how these guys have dates, exact dates of when they started. I have no clue how. I mean, my mom paid for the lessons, and I was 16 years old, and went in there, and I don't remember the exact date on that. And actually, I was just going by trophies I had because I started competing early on as a white belt. So I was always saying 73, and then we have Christmas parties here, and a guy named Carl Prather, who was my senpai at that school, was here. And he said, "No, you didn't. You started in 72. And I said, "How do you know that?" I said, "I'm going by my trophies and what they say," because I was a white belt. And he said, what was John Nichols? He was an old Isshin-Ryu guy. What was his rank when you were there? I said, brown belt. He goes, "Well, his date of Shodan was blah, 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 1972. I go, "Oh, well, that must have been, I guess." So that's what I put it at, 72, he told me.
And what is your Isshin-Ryu lineage? So how do you trace back to Grandmaster Shimabuku?
Well, like I said, I started at the Inkster School. We had a hodgepodge of, instructors there. The head instructor was Norbert Donnelly. I was there for about 1.5 years before it changed hands to a man named Lloyd Russett. And for some reason, I didn't want to stick around anymore. So I'd been pretty much a white belt for 1.5 years. I went to orange belt, and that was it. That's how long it took back then. I mean, you just didn't get rank. And so John Nichols, who kind of lived in my neighborhood, not too far, being 16, 17, be driving, and so I could drive quickly to his house. He had a garage dojo. So I went there and trained with John Nichols a little bit. Did a little bit of training with Ed Babbitts, but he stopped training after a while. And then in 1970, I went through brown belt ranks with Nichols. And then in 1978, Ed Babbitts promoted me to Shodan, first degree black belt. Then I left Nichols and started training on my own with some friends of mine. Somewhere in the early 80s, being a Livonia police officer, I was always around Sensei White, Babbitts, and they all hung out together and trained together, and so I'd be at Sensei White school a lot with Babbitts, and Sam Santilli was there also. And I went on a radio run, a domestic run, at a house, and Sam's there. It's his parents fighting with the neighbors. And it was like a little reunion. He goes, "Hey, come on down to the dojo." I'm like, I don't know if I want to. And he says, "You know your weapons?" I go, "No, I didn't learn any weapons at that time." And he said, "Come on down, I'll teach you your weapons." I'm like, okay. And so I went there for, from the early 80s, maybe 1984-ish to 1989. I trained under Sam, went through the rank. I was part of the AOKA, American Okinawan Karate Association. And I'd also go and train over at Dexter Davison, the old dojo with Willie Adams, Sensei Adams. I go there in the mornings because I work late nights. And so I would go train with Sensei Adams a lot of times. My teacher over there was Eugene Woods, Sensei Woods. He was my main teacher because I had to straighten out my katas a little bit and things like that. So in 1990, I was kind of disenchanted with all the tournament stuff. I was over all that, and I went to some seminars in the mid 80s that were held by a 10th dan from Okinawa, Seiyu Yata, and then Roy Osborne was his student. And I went to a couple of those seminars, and wow, I was a san dan or ni dan at the time, and I thought, oh my God, what is this? I felt so inadequate. I felt, that they were way up there and I was way down here. And I thought, well, how do you get up there? And I thought, I'll train with them. So about 86, I started training with Sensei Roy Osborne. Because back in the day, we didn't learn any bunkai. And that's unfortunate. We were just taught kata and sparred, mostly sparring. My instructors at Inkster did not like kata. So I probably had 2 katas the whole year and a half there, and all we did was fight. And so I started training with Roy Osborne to learn his Isshinryu bunkai and some of his katas, because it was the same lineage. It was Kyan lineage, Kyan Chotoku lineage. So he started showing me these amazing lethal techniques, and I was just overwhelmed. And I still continue to train with him. I've been with him for over 40 years. And I hold a 7th dan now on Isshinryu, his style. In 1990, my Isshin-Ryu, I wanted to know what first generation Isshin-Ryu and what were the guys training directly with Master Shimbuku, what were they doing? And so I'm reading Black Belt magazine, and a man named Arsenio Vicula is on there. And I'm like, wow. And I'm reading his stories, and I'm going, wow. And so I started writing him these long, long letters that he always complained about because he had to read them on a plane. And stayed with him and changed my katas to be more like what he learned from Tatsu Shimbuku, and stayed with him for 18 years. So I'm actually considered 2nd generation Isshin-Ryu through Vicula. And I've had the pleasure of training with guys like Sherman Harrell, Sensei Harrell, who was 1st generation. I've been around a lot with Tom Lewis Sensei. He's one of the last people who promoted me, and Harold Mitchum Sensei. And then Tokumura Sensei. I mean, he trained for a long time, like 30 years in Isshin-Ryu, right from 1958 to 75 when Master Shimbuku died. He was there. And then he went to Kichido, Shimbuku. But then later on he changed styles and created this Tokushinryu. So yeah, I wanted to get as close as I could to Master Shimbuku's kata, so I trained with Sensei Vicula for 18 years.
And you've mentioned some other styles, and you have high rank in a few. What are they, and then how do they relate to Isshin-Ryu? Or how do you feel they relate to Isshin-Ryu?
Isshinryu, through Roy Osborne, is just another name for Shorin-Ryu. And he learned his Isshinryu through a man named Fusakise on Okinawa. And at that time, Sensei Kisei was teaching Isshinryu, now he teaches something else, his own style. But the lineage that he learned it was from somebody on Okinawa, and I can't remember who it was, but they had trained with Tatsushima Boku and had the same lineage of katas. They have the same katas we do, they just do them differently.
Mm-hmm.
So that really related to Isshin-Ryu. And then, you know, my first trip to Okinawa, which was in 1994, I was introduced by Sensei Vikula to a man named Iha Kotaro Sensei of Rukonkai, which was the style we were just doing, and Tokumura Kensho Sensei, and started training under them, going back and forth to Okinawa. I think I got maybe 12, 14 trips there. And so we started doing that to dojo. I started teaching it. I went up to about 5th dan in Rukonkai Kobudo, which is the one we were doing, which doesn't really relate to Isshin-Ryu too much. But, and then I stopped going to that teacher and just stuck with Tokumura Sensei. I mean, when I started with Tokumura Sensei, it wasn't a Ruha. He called it just Tokushin. So he had made some katas up with the teiko, the pointed horseshoe teiko, and the eku, the boat paddle. And there weren't katas for the teiko, no particular katas. And he didn't like how people did the boat paddle in Okinawa, because he said they changed hands like a boat. You know, if you're a fisherman, he said you don't change hands on the eku. He's from a fishing village in Okinawa, Hishkiya. And so he taught me those were the first 2 katas he ever taught. And then he kept adding on these katas of obscure weapons, and that was his forte. Most of the katas are obscure weapons in Okinawa that nobody has official katas for. So if they did, they were taking that kata and using an empty hand kata with it. Mm-hmm. So he thought, well, I'm gonna make some, and he started creating this system. And after a while, we had 14 katas, and he announced that he was gonna make it a Ruha, official style, and he did. So now it's Tokushin-Ryu. And I'm the first and only so far 8th dan promoted in Tokushin-Ryu. I'm his second in command and the USA director of Tokushin-Ryu.
Okay. You had mentioned earlier being involved in tournaments and going to different seminars and tests. Are there any that stand out, or anything you want to share about a tournament, or?
You know, it was fun at that time in my life, but being a law enforcement officer and being a narc, I worked narcotics for a long time in my career, 12 years. I was a street narc at that time, had a long beard and long hair and biker leather, and was buying drugs in the greater Metro Detroit area. And so I wanted something more reality-based than point karate. And that's when I got disenchanted and really started looking around for other things. So, you know, I enjoyed the tournament section. I think I got 1 grand champion. I wasn't a person that went every weekend. I stayed kind of in the Midwest, was part of the AOKA, so you were expected to come fight with them in Chicago and Connecticut, this area, you know, down in Kentucky and stuff like that. But, you know, I didn't go a lot. I'd started to get a little disenchanted with it. The AOK Grand Nationals, I did in 1 year, I can't remember what year it was maybe 86, something like that. I was heavyweight champion in Kumite. And then when I went up for my Sandan, in the AOKA, you didn't have to go in front of the national board until you're 4th dan. Well, Santilli, I had trained all the time, so Santilli said, the national board's in town for a tournament we're gonna do in Northville, and I want you to go up for promotion to 3rd dan with them. I don't care. So I tested the day before the tournament, and they were gonna give you the results the next day. And so I was awarded my Sandan at the tournament, and just so happens I took grand champion fighting that day. It was a good day.
Yeah. When you go to tournaments, or when you did you strictly only fight, or did you ever compete with weapons and kata?
All of it.
Okay.
I always felt you had to be a well-rounded martial artist. I've seen too many of my senpais, my brother-in-law included, all they did was fight. So when it came to that time in their career, instead of extending it with kata and teaching and weapons, they just gave it up
Mhm.
because all they did is fight. That's all they wanted to do. And I didn't want to be that. I knew that I was going to do this for probably the rest of my life. I mean, I stopped an early football career. I was hoping to go on to small college football. I love football, and I was a quarterback for many, many years. And because I got into karate, I was like, I'm just doing this. And I was so fascinated with it. And I just was almost just totally obsessed by it. I was constantly, doing karate. And so yeah, I did all three all the time. And sometimes I won things, sometimes I didn't. Didn't matter to me. I just competed just for the fun of it. One thing I did do though, at the end, getting into more reality-based fighting, I was introduced to bogu kumite by Roy Osborne with the head cage and the gear. So I started fighting bogu with some friends of mine, students, for about 2 years in my garage. And at Santilli's dojo, we did a little bit. And that culminated into a bogu tournament at Bob White's, one of his tournaments back in around 86 or 7-ish, somewhere around there. And we had a bogu section, the traditional tournament, we had a bogu section. A bunch of tough Canadians came, and we had a bunch of guys that we were bogu fighting with, and I took first in heavyweight. There was no grand champion. And then I retired. I figured going on top. I loved the contact. I liked the idea of bogu having a cage because, I worked for a living. I didn't want to go to work with black eyes and broken noses.
Right.
So that cage protected you from that, but you still got to hit as hard as you wanted. Like in bogu kumite, you get a point by knocking somebody back, knocking them down or knocking them out. That's the only way to get a point. You can't flick a back fist and not have any action. It's not a point. So I liked that part of it. I was really interested in that.
I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't know that anyone does it anymore.
No, some people claim to, but I've seen them try in tournaments or in promotions. There's a bogu style of fighting. The problem with people is they're good tournament fighters, and they put on bogu gear and go full contact, and they look like trash. They're throwing trash techniques.
Right.
My main concern with that bogu, because I know that could happen, my main concern was how did I look when I fought? Was I throwing proper karate techniques? And I remember coming out of those bouts, how'd I look? That's all I wanted to know. And so I was very set on throwing proper karate techniques. I started out doing contact with some friends with 16-ounce boxing gloves on. You can't throw proper karate techniques with 16-ounce gloves. So I was like, I don't want to do this. I want to do karate techniques. I don't want to do boxing techniques. So the bogu was perfect. Small gloves. What you did is, in bogu, you pad the weapons, or pad the targets, not the weapon. So you have a chest protector, a head protector, and small gloves with just padding over the two knuckles. That's it. They made us, for insurance purposes, wear those fluffy foot gear, but I kick with the ball in my foot. I never kick with my instep. So it worked for me.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a lot.
How do you spell that?
B-O-G-U.
Okay.
It's kind of funny on my trophy, Sensei White made it a box of wine. He spelled it boku. So my tournament, my trophy, it says boku tournament. I'm like, wow.
I'm glad I asked how to spell it. When did you begin to teach Isshin-Ryu?
Oh, I was teaching as a Q in my backyard, some friends.
Okay.
At high school and just out of high school. I was a brown belt at the time, so I was teaching back then just privately, and I did that a lot. I opened up a commercial dojo. Well, I started off at our rec center, which was Bentley High School at the time, probably in somewhere about 1999, 2000-ish. Was there for a couple terms, and then they were going to build the big rec center. So whenever they built that, they kind of said, well, it's going to be okay. We had 25 students. We were in a room, a schoolroom in Bentley. And they said, you're just going to walk over to the new building. No stoppage in your classes. Okay. And then they came to me and said, oh, well, we're not going to do this. They're behind in construction as usual, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what do I do with my students? They're like, well, it's probably going to be a year before we're back in service. And I thought, we got to do something. So then we found a building. We're in 7 Mile in Livonia. And in 2001, started officially the Okinawa Budokai School of Karate in Kobudo.
You've mentioned some teachers already, but are there any teachers in martial arts who particularly stand out for you or who've really inspired you?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, obviously, Sensei Adams and Santilli, who started me out there, I kind of got my corrections from them and, molded a little bit by them. And then definitely Sensei Avicula, finding Tatsu Shimabuku's way. And in fact, I had been training with Roy Osborne. Here's another person, Roy Osborne. Training with Sensei Osborne, and I told him that if I don't see in Sensei Avicula what I think true Isshin-Ryu is, because I've heard so much about it, that I'm just going to change my bone block and twist punch and call it Okinawa-te. And he never really asked me to step into Isshinryu. So he, showed me Bonkai. I learned some of his katas, but I didn't have to redo a kata to be like his. So if he had Wansu, he said, just keep your Wansu. And he just showed me principles of what he did. And so he was a major influence in real karate for me. And then later on, training with guys like Sensei Sherman Harrell. I mean, that man was amazing. I mean, he taught me a lot about body dynamics, as Avicula did. But he had some little things that just escalated my karate, I thought, and I think, to a new level, just by little things he taught me.
So thinking about yourself, what do you think your teaching philosophy is in relation to karate and Isshin-Ryu?
Going to Okinawa all the time and training in those dojos, there's not a lot of formality. It's a very relaxed atmosphere, and that's what we do here. In my mind, and the way the Okinawans are, I don't think you can learn anything in a stressful environment. I don't care what it is. So when you have all this yes sir, no sir, and all this military etiquette that people have brought and the Marines brought into Isshin-Ryu, I don't think that's a good idea. Sure, there's going to be respect, but having two kind of a militaristic kind of thing, kids are obviously different. You got to keep them, straight. But for adults, it's a little rough, and I think a lot of times adults don't like that kind of format, and that's not how they teach in Okinawa. So I brought that into my teaching when I started a storefront dojo, and we've always kept it relaxed, respectful, but relaxed, just like today, as you saw. I mean, I have mostly black belts on the floor, everybody's respectful, but it's a relaxed environment, I've never required anybody to call me anything in this dojo, and they call me sensei. To me, that's the greatest honor. I don't care to be called anything else. In fact, when some people call me master, I kind of go, well, no, just sensei's good, But I don't call myself anything. And I never tell any student that walks through the door to call me anything. That's up to them. You don't give yourself titles. That's the Okinawa way. It's kind of arrogant if you do that. I don't even sign things Sensei Perkins, Jeff Perkins. Or if somebody asks me in the dojo or from another dojo, what do I call you? Well, I have a name called Jeff. Call me Jeff. I'm good with that. But yeah, I've never required anybody to call me anything. It's a title that in Okinawa and Japan, it's a title that somebody gives you. You don't just say it because I have this rank and I should be called this. So that's one of the problems I have with a lot of modern karate is everybody wants a title, and they seem to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, until somebody's got the Grand Poobah, title of whatever. So.
What do you think, specifically about Isshin-Ryu, what do you think one of the most valuable aspects of it is?
It's a natural style of karate. I always tell people, if what you're doing in Isshin-Ryu doesn't feel natural to you, then you're doing it wrong. Because Isshin-Ryu is a totally natural form of karate. I know there's basics of how you stand, and the thing about shoulder width apart, heel toe on line. Well, you know what? Not everybody's the same. Not everybody's built the same. So I was always following the rules like that until I got to Okinawa. And like Tokumura sensei was always like, you big guy, this way, get wider, get longer. None of this, no small like this. And I thought, oh my God, that's right. And when I started doing that and finding my seisan and my stance, to me, everything worked better. Everything worked 100% better instead of following a format of, you do this. I don't even teach that no more. I show people a seisan stance and I tell them, you have to find your seisan. You have to find your shikodachi, your seiuchi stance. It's you, we're different. I'm different from you and you and you and you're different from me. You have to find your own stances. As long as the principles of what you're doing are the same, then I'm good. I'm not trying to make robots. I'm trying to make karate students and Kobudo students.
So you'd mentioned you were a police officer, you're a retired police lieutenant, correct? So have you ever needed, or have you used your karate while on the job?
Just, minor things, physically minor things like control holds and things of that, foot sweeps. I never really punched or struck anybody. So I guess you could say that I did use my karate because I didn't hit anybody. I would see police officers just wail on people for, the slightest thing. And I remember one time being a karate guy, my bosses threw me in the cell block to be a turnkey for a day or two, and they wanted to see what I could do. I didn't like that. I'm not going back there and starting to fight with anybody. If I can talk you out, I'm gonna talk you out of it. I talked a lot of people into getting arrested without me having to put my hands physically on them violently. And to me, that was a good day, because I don't want to do that. If I have to, I'm capable, but I never wanted to do that. So yeah, I kind of used it in every day, just mentality of karate do.
Did you ever teach it to your other fellow officers or anything like that?
Yeah, I was part of our training unit, and I was in charge of it towards when I got higher rank, when I became a lieutenant. I was in charge of our training unit, but I was always a firearms instructor, a defensive tactics instructor, as I am currently at the police academy, the Western Wayne County Police Academy. I teach defensive tactics there.
Okay. What advice would you have for Isshinryu students and instructors, if you could give them any advice?
Just train. Just train. Don't worry about rank. Don't think about your next rank. All that matters is what you do on the dojo floor. That's it. Belt color doesn't matter. If you can't perform at that level, that's your problem. I've been in athletics all my life, but I've never been a natural at it. There were guys at Sensei Adams' dojo that were just doing amazing things with fighting. I was never a natural. But what I had is I trained more than they did. And again, I trained for my body, being a little shorter and a little stockier. So I trained to hit really hard. And I kicked with the ball of my foot. And I asked Gene Woods that one day. Somebody asked him and said, so what do you remember from Sensei Perkins when he was training with you and fighting tournaments? What do you remember? He said, do not get in front of that front kick. Doesn't matter where it hits you, it's gonna hurt like hell. And I said, yeah, that's what I did. I went back to the basics. I got away from flip kicks and all this tournament stuff and went right back to my Isshin-Ryu basics. I fought out of them, and that worked for me. So, yeah, just because you aren't athletic or a natural, flexible person, which I'm not, you develop techniques to work for you. And that's just training. There's no secret to karate and Kobudo. It's just training. It's consistent training. You can't come to the dojo for a month and then leave for 3 and come back for 1 and leave for 4. You're gonna have the same mistakes. And as a teacher, I hate teaching people like that, because sooner or later I'm gonna go, look, I'm just gonna put you, do what you're gonna do. I'm not gonna try to correct you because you're never here. The most important thing is training and consistency. That's all it takes. There's no magic. Some people are more flexible than others. Some people do prettier kata than others. Some people got more power than others. It's just a matter of training and trying to understand your body and how you can do it. So you know, we used to always emulate our teachers, but some of my teachers were extremely flexible. I've seen Sensei Adams do a jumping, spinning hook kick with swinging a sword at him and tap the guy in the back of the head and land like a cat. I was like, I could never do that in my life unless you were on the ground. But yeah, it's just a matter of training and consistency. That's all it is.
How many students have you promoted to black belts?
Oh, I don't know. Probably in the area of 25 or 30 over the years. Some of my black belts aren't here anymore. We carry pretty much about 17 black belts currently or more. Some of mine just came back. Some of my youngsters who were with me since they were 12 till they left for college still find time now to come back.
Yeah.
You know, in their busy business world now and everything, and are starting back into it. So that's always enjoyable to see them come through the door. You know, so yeah, you know, about 30. I've been training. This is my 50th year training in Isshin-Ryu, and so I've been teaching since brown belt. Got my black belt in '78, and I didn't start really promoting people till I was involved in promotions, you know, at Santilli's for Sandan and things like that. When we opened up a dojo, I promoted people, obviously. And when I was with Sensei Abdicula, when I didn't have a dojo, I had some private students that I promoted to dan ranks. But so I'd say 30, probably 25, 30.
Have any of them gone on to continue open their own schools, anything like that you know of? No, none of them. A lot of them came from other schools. I know you interviewed Sensei Dan Holloway. He's my Kobudo student. He's one of the senior Kobudo dans. So he teaches that in his dojo. So he already had his dojo. Sensei Tom Perry has his dojo. Him and his son Adam come here and train in Kobudo. Okay.
So I have black belts that had their own dojo and came here for a reason to take back to their dojo. But none of them started their own dojo.
Okay. In 2010, you were inducted into the Isshinryu Hall of Fame. What did that mean for you?
Oh, that was incredible. You know, I mean, just having an honor like that, you know, from a group of your peers in Isshin-Ryu was just amazing. You know, I'm not the most amiable guy, because from being a cop, you just, you know, I never really had a lot of cop friends I hung out with. It was all karate. So these guys are family to me, and so I didn't travel a lot after a while, and I hadn't been to the Isshinryu Hall of Fame for a long time, and so getting back into the mainstream of Isshin-Ryu after a while later on, and then being nominated by my students and accepted was just unbelievable. I mean, I didn't know what was happening until I got this letter. I'm like, who did this? And they're like, no. You know, but it was a great honor, just a great honor.
Any other accomplishments or awards you've received in Isshin-Ryu or any other styles?
Yeah, I mean, we got Dojo of the Year at the Isshinryu Hall of Fame one year. I got the Master Harold Mitchum Lifetime Award from the WIKA. Yeah, I mean, there's been a few. And obviously, I mean, getting rank to my last rank, I tested in front of, before he passed away, Sensei Harold Mitchum and Sensei Tom Lewis. I tested for 8th dan. Literally got on the floor and ran my katas along with John Ingram, their top student, and got promoted to 8th dan by them. That was huge.
And you're president of the Isshinryu Tomo no Kai.
Yes.
So what are the goals of that organization? Tell me about that.
It's kind of funny. When you look online, it's got bylaws and all this other stuff, which we kind of made up, but it's very simple. Tomo no Kai means friendship group, friendship association. Tokumura Sensei, he's the one that made that up, and he created the word, and he wanted everybody to be Tomo no Kai. So when he comes here he always says, I don't teach for money, I teach for friendship. I teach to make friends. So we'd make Tomono-kai shirts and stuff, and he loved it, you know, because he wants everybody to be friends. So basically, it's the Isshin-Ryu friendship group. There was no, you know, we didn't, in the bylaws, we had, you know, you could be promoted if you didn't have a sensei, and we were having an event, you wanted to come tell us, and we'll test you. But we never had to. I mean, it's kind of just, you know, a group of people that with common interests, and that's pretty much what it is.
Do you find that people that come and participate, are they affiliated with other organizations as well?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Or non-affiliated?
Yeah,
Just
and some, you know, some didn't really want to be affiliated because they felt it would be a conflict with their current association, but then when explained to them, it's just a friendship association, nothing else. Then they go, oh, okay. And there was, you know, we weren't trying to make money. There was a one-time lifetime fee of like $60. You got a certificate. And at first, Tokumura Sensei, a little water. Tokumura Sensei wanted everybody to be Tomono-kai if they came to Okinawa to train with him. So I started making these membership cards. So if they did go on their own, I'd give them his contact info and he could show them I'm Tomono-kai. And so he'd go, oh yeah, come on in and train. So he started to, as he got older, didn't want like everybody in the world coming down there, because he got pretty popular. He still is pretty popular in the US and over in Europe.
Okay.
And he has his own small home dojo in his home. Beautiful though. And he doesn't really teach formal students. He used to have a formal dojo when I first met him. But now he's just got his own training dojo, and you know, people come like me or my students or whatever, and then we train. But he doesn't have actual students right now, other than us over here.
Do you get together once a year or?
With Tokumura Sensei, it was always once a year. I was going to Okinawa, and then I would bring him here, back and forth, switching years. And then we had this group, the Isshin-Ryu Tomono-kai, combined with the UIK at the time, United Nations Karate Association, under Sensei Mitchum and John Ingram. And they, when I brought Tokumura over here, one of our students used the Ingram's dojo in Florida when she hosted them down there with the Ingrams, and they just fell in love with Tokumura. So then we had our first training in Bukai in Nashville. Thought we'd have some fun and make it a central location for people to travel. And so we had a blast there, and we at the time, a bunch of UIK people, other people, Tomono-kai people all got together and did this. And then John Ingram kept coming to our events, and I kept going to their events, and he said, hey, what do you think about just us getting together and running our own event? I go, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
So then we just started doing it, and pretty much, you know, when Sensei Mitchum and Sensei Lewis promoted me to 8th Dan, I felt the need to join the WIK, the UIK at the time. And then John put me on their board as an advisor, Kobudo advisor on the UIK and now the WIK. So it just kind of developed into this friendship and this molding of Isshin-Ryu and Isshin-Ryu in these two groups. And then I got a hold of my student from Denmark, Lars Anderson, and he took all his dojo. He's got about 5 or 6 or more dojos in Europe. He's got about 6 countries.
Wow.
And he runs Isshin-Ryu Europe. And he put all his students under the UIK, but that's how it became the WIK, then we had Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And then we pulled in Chile. And then they always had Canada, we had Canada. So it became more
Is that Albert Mady in Canada or
no,
someone else?
No, there's, God, I can't remember their names now. There was one of Ingram's dojos.
Okay.
Is in Canada. No, we don't have any other than that over there. But we got a lot in Europe now, Isshinryu and WIK Isshinryu, and in Chile. And I just saw that Chile, that team over there is now spread it into Colombia. So it's now just, Tokumura has no idea how many dojo he has worldwide. He doesn't think like that. We got him a map one time. Lars made it, and we showed him, he went, oh yeah, nice. And that's all he said. He doesn't think like that. But he's got tons of dojos now all over the world.
Do you think that it's important, so you also serve on for the World Isshinryu Karate Association?
Yeah, I'm on their board, but as an advisor, Kobudo advisor.
Got it.
So pretty much strictly at Kobudo. I have been involved in some of their karate promotions, obviously, but mostly Kobudo.
Do you think it's important to serve on these boards?
Yeah, I think so. You know, as Tokumura Sensei's senior student, I feel the need to you know, take what he teaches me and spread it as far as I can, as much as I can. And so obviously when you're on somebody's board as an advisor for Kobudo, you know, more people get involved in that. I mean, you know, the Ingrams have some, we call them Gashukus down in Florida, and we always have a day of Kobudo. A day of Kobudo, a day of karate. So we all get together and, you know, teach and do our thing. So that's part of it. Plus, you know, Sensei Adam used to say all the time, you should always be part of an association. You know, I see a lot of people nowadays who kind of promote themselves, and you know, all of a sudden they get higher ranking. You're like, where'd you get that? You know, so mostly rank is given out by associations. So that kind of legitimizes things. If you can say, well, I got my rank from this organization or that organization, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the same rank. I mean, I got Sensei Victor calls his group the Isshin-Kai. And I got my rank 4th through 7th Dan through Sensei Vicula. Well, then at one point, Sensei Mitchum promoted me to 7th Dan in the WIK. So then he recognized my 7th Dan. So it kind of works back and forth. You may be a certain Dan in this one and not in this one. Right. So I'm not into being involved in a lot of them. So currently I'm just part of what Tokumura is doing. And the only karate association I'm in is the WIK.
Any thoughts about the fracturing? So we know there's the World Karate Federation, which helped karate get into the Olympics in Japan. But Isshinryu's not. Some of our katas are considered World Karate Federation or Association approved. You know, they look different maybe, but it's the same kata. Yeah. But all of these, within Isshinryu, there's so many different organizations. Any thoughts on that?
It's probably a bad thing, and I've talked to it. You know, I hang out with some first generation guys still. You know, Sensei Bartasevitz and Sensei Lewis. I see them a lot, and we talk about this. And you know, and they just got promoted to 10th Dan in this last WIK event, which I mean, well overdue. I mean, Sensei Lewis started in 1958, and he's 83, 84, something like that. I mean, it was way overdue. And but I talked about it with them, and they blame it on themselves. They say that the seniors should have taken more control of Isshin-Ryu at the time, and they tried, but some personality clashes, and so things started to spread out. They had dojos. Harold Long had a dojo with Bartasevitz, and I don't know if Tom Lewis was there, Vicula was there. They combined their skills and made, okay, you're gonna be the kata expert, and you're gonna be this, and you're gonna be that. But then, you know, things happen. Well, I'm not doing it like that. I remember it like this, or whatever. So it started to splinter that way. But yeah, Bartasevitz Sensei, he blames it on them. So we should have kept control better, but we didn't. And that's how it just became a fracture, and people started making their own organizations. And it just, it just amazes me when people still think that we can unite under one flag for Isshin-Ryu. It is never gonna happen. I don't care what anybody says. It has been tried, and it's never gonna happen. So you just gotta deal with it. I mean, there's branches of Isshin-Ryu, and there's branches of goju, and it's just what happens. You know, after that head instructor passes away, people start to filter, you know. In Okinawa, a lot of times they won't even, you know, they won't hand it to, like Isshin-Ryu, they won't hand it to the most senior black belt. They hand the system to a son who may not have experience. And so with those senior black belts, just like, and they split. Now, Tokumura is a very loyal individual. And he stayed with Kichido, even though, you know, he knew Kichido did not have the abilities that a lot of the senior dons who left did. And he said he just wanted to stay with the Shimabuku family, the family name. So he's very loyal that way. But that's what happens. I mean, they happened in Goju at the Jundokan. Tokumura he switched to Goju, back in the 80s. And when his teacher, Miyazato Ichi, died, they handed it to his son, who wasn't even in karate. He was a businessman. Well, then they started teaching him karate. Well, all the night dons and stuff that were under Miyazato Sensei went, we're gone. And they left and started their own dojos. It just kind of what naturally happens, you know. And depending on who gets, you know, put in charge, you know. So same with Isshin-Ryu. I mean, people just start splintering. It's gonna happen. You just gotta deal with it.
Do you think that popular culture such as television and movies has effect on like established dojo systems and karate systems?
Yes, I started because of Bruce Lee. I started back in those days when I saw Bruce Lee at the movies, like, wow, this is some cool stuff, you know. So I started because of that. This new insurge of Cobra Kai and all this stuff, I'm sure that the kids are probably getting full. Your classes are probably getting full from that. You know, they're watching Cobra Kai and stuff like, wow. You know, Karate Kid did the same thing. Anytime somebody comes on the scene like that, it seems to influence a lot of participation in it. But unfortunately, there's only a few stay. People I started with from my high school at the youngster school, none of them were in karate. Never stayed long. I'm the only one.
Have you heard of McDojos?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any thoughts or comments on those organizations?
Yes, buyer beware. Before you pay money to somebody to enter their dojo, do some research on them. Talk to the sensei, watch class. There are some schools that will not let you watch a class. If that's the case, walk right out. That's ridiculous. Our door's open. I've had a lot of people from different styles come in here and just sit and watch. Like, yeah, can I help you? Yeah, I just want to watch. Okay, I don't care. You know, this is what we do. So, yeah, just buyer beware. You know, just because somebody is a 10th dan over here, it doesn't mean he's a better teacher and karate person than the 7th dan over here. You know, he might have got rank on his own somehow, you know, made himself. You see all these guys with 15 different ranks from 20 different martial arts. I don't know where they get the time in a lifetime of being only 40, you know. So, yeah, buyer beware would be my thing. Just research what you're doing. We're lucky that a lot of people that are here have done that. We have 2 traditional Japanese students that are corporate businessmen for Japanese Tokyo companies that live here. Toshi-san is one, and he has rank and had studied Kendo. And then there's Kaz-san Murase, who had to move back down to Kentucky. He still does Isshin-Ryu. And they talk about it. They were a little freaked out about trying to find a dojo to train in. But when they came here and saw what we did, it was like home. I mean, they don't want to leave. I mean, Kaz had to move to Kentucky. He said he was so depressed, you know, because we're his USA family here, you know. And so he's, you know, we haven't visited him. We're gonna do it this summer. He's down in Kentucky, but I think he's coming back this month sometime. He comes back, and then he's got plans of starting a Isshinryu dojo in Japan when he goes back home.
Wow.
So that's kind of cool. I mean, when you have people that were in Japanese martial arts who then want to come to your dojo to train and are very comfortable with what you're doing, that kind of says something, I think. I mean, Toshi, and we have fun with those guys too, and they teach us a lot of Japanese too, because we know a little bit, but usually we ask them a lot of questions.
Sure. That's nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
So what do you think you see as the future of karate and Isshin-Ryu in the United States?
Well, there's a huge insurgence of tournaments again, which I'm surprised at, because it kind of went down. And when I started formally teaching martial arts, teaching Isshin-Ryu and everything, I didn't encourage anybody to do tournaments. I didn't have trophies in my dojo. The ones you see are students of mine who brought them and said, hey, can we just throw it over here? I'm like, yeah, but I would never wanted that kind of environment for what I do. And I have a ton of trophies, but they're in my basement. I don't bring them here, I don't care to, and I never put them in the old dojo. And I've always wanted to do traditional karate. It's a sad day, you know, a lot of times, a lot of these dojos, especially ones that might be at community centers or when I was with Sensei Santilli, we were in a senior center, and we only had 2 days a week for training. One day was a kata day, tournament kata day. One day was a fighting day. And most dojos are set up like that. Kata day, fighting day, nothing else, you know? So when I started learning from people who trained in Okinawa and then went to Okinawa to train, I wanted a dojo that was more traditional. I don't discourage students who want to compete. One of my students, he's 15 now, but when he was 12, 13 maybe, we just threw him in this kids tournament, and he got grand champion from a kata that one of my instructors made up with him, Seisan Kama. But he did it, it's online. He did it so well. And then people came up to me and said, is that your student? I said, yeah. They said, oh, we thought so, very traditional. I thought, Seisan Kama's traditional? No, we made that stuff up. But yeah, I never discourage them, and I'd support them if they wanted to go, and I'd train them if they wanted to go, because you got to train differently a little bit. I never try to change my training, like focus on one tournament kata. If I had a tournament coming out, I did all my katas. I did all my weapons. So I would just like people to get more involved in traditional Kobudo, actually. I mean, you know, Isshin-Ryu has a pretty much a beginner syllabus for Kobudo. You know, couple side kata, bow katas. You know, some people do this tuifa kata that's actually not a kata.
Tanfa?
Yeah. Tuifa is the Okinawa Hogan name for it.
Okay, thank you.
So, you know, they do this chifa kata, which isn't really a kata. It was Master Shimbuku forgetting a kata and just going through some movements. And then people was like, oh, this is a kata. No, it's not. It's parts of Hamahiga no tuifa. So,
right.
You know, when I started learning traditional Kobudo, it's just like any other style of karate. You learn basics, you learn how to hold the bow, you learn how to do things that Isshin-Ryu dojos don't teach. And the reason being is, like, the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes out of class, you do Kobudo. That's not how to do it, if you want to do it right. So I was teaching it like that at first when I started teaching, and then when I started really getting involved in Kobudo and Okinawa, I was thinking, I'm not teaching that way. It's just not right. So I took all the Isshin-Ryu Kobudo, and we dabble with it in this class sometimes, or when people want to do the katas, and or put it in the Tokushin curriculum a little bit. And you know, a lot of my black belts were disappointed. I said, well, come to the Kobudo class. That's the only way I'm teaching Kobudo is in a separate class. I don't like this 15, 20 minutes in the class, just go run through a kata, oh yeah, now you got it. I see people in Isshin-Ryu say, yeah, I'm a fourth dan in Isshin-Ryu in Kobudo because I got a fourth dan in Isshin-Ryu. No, you're not. There's a lot to it. It's like any other art. There's a lot to it. And so we teach separate Kobudo classes. And that's why we get people from other styles that come here and just do Kobudo. Or other style, or other dojos, other Isshin-Ryu dojos come here and just do Kobudo. So I would like to see, you know, people in Isshin-Ryu get more into the traditional Kobudo, whatever style it is. I mean, there's a style out there that's still linked to Tarashinkan, which is very good. And so if you just want to, you know, find a teacher for that, and you know, with travel, I mean, you can go anywhere. I mean, my teachers are in Okinawa, you know, so I always traveled. Or when I was training under Sensei Vincula, I'd be going to California, and then he'd be coming here 3 or 4 times a year. So, you know, don't worry about, you know, like, there's nothing local. Find somebody to start training. Just do that and bring it to your dojo and you know, have a Kobudo class instead of attaching it to your karate class. And I'm not a businessman, but I think if you add classes, you can probably add money to the fund. So that's what I tell people. I'm saying you're gonna have separate Kobudo classes, and that's what guys do here. You know, we have rates, and they pay certain rates, but when you add classes, it goes up a little bit and up a little bit. And so there are some people that pay $120 a month here. There's some people who pay $75 a month or $80 a month. We've never changed our fees from the time we started, because it's a club. You know, we just keep the lights on and the things going and pay the rent. That's all we do. Nobody makes any money. So that would be my thing. Get involved in some traditional Kobudo. I mean, I'm pretty much, and I tell these guys when they walk in here from another dojo, you're going to become a weapon snob, and it's true. I mean, you know, a lot of these people go to Century Martial Arts in the magazine, they buy their bows and their sai, and when you start doing Kobudo, people are looking for Scott Cruz, you know, saying, I want this weapon to fit me perfect. And I go, see? Turn it into a Kobudo snob.
I have one of his bows.
Yeah, there's nothing like having a custom weapon like that.
Yeah.
I don't judge tournaments. Number one, I haven't done it for a long time, and personally, I think that's unfair to a competitor. You know, I haven't done it for a long time, so if I come to a tournament, I just visit street clothes, so they don't put me in some kind of position there. But the other thing is, especially in Kobudo, I'm very strict in Kobudo, you know, and I see a lot of trash out there, and I don't want to judge it. You know, you're not my student. Whatever you do, you want to do. Same with online. People, you know, put their katas up and want people to take shots at them. I don't. Hey, you're not my student. If you want me to give you advice, then contact me. Mm-hmm. If you put something out there, I'm not going to comment on it. I don't really care. So yeah, I'd say just try to be more traditional in what they're doing.
And finally, what do you do outside of karate?
Pretty much this is my life, karate, but I do teach firearms for Schoolcraft College, and I teach defensive tactics at Police Academy. So, you know, retirement went out the window because I pick up a lot of classes, especially for Schoolcraft. I got one tomorrow, a CPL class, which is a carry license class I got tomorrow. So I have to do that tomorrow. I'm getting a little too old to work all day and then come here and train all night. It just kills me. So I do that a lot, and that's pretty much what I do. I teach. So on my off time here, I teach again. I still train. I'm 65, be 66 this year. I still train in karate and Kobudo 5 days a week, and then I weightlift 2 days a week still. So I still keep going. Just got to keep moving.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me. This was
you're
really
welcome.
great. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No.
Thank you.